Last year brought the revival of the Alien franchise with Alien Romulus, but there were two movies I excluded from my first ever watch through of that franchise, the Alien vs. Predator movies. Well, that was intentional, as I knew a new Predator movie would be coming out this year, and those two crossover movies are maybe canon to the Predator series, but not Alien. Anyways, I thought with the release of this latest film this year called Badlands, now would be the perfect time to delve into this other famous sci-fi series for the very first time to see what the fuss is all about, share with you my very subjective thoughts, put it on a tier list, give them some scores and whatever, and give my condolences to the person who came up with the name of this series, because the word Predator is mostly used in a different kind of way these days. Our first film in the franchise, Predator, starts off like any other 1980s action film. A bunch of macho hoorah soldiers band together to commit probably an untold amount of war crimes, indiscriminately killing the bad guys with some cool action. But like the film Aliens that released 1 year prior, this action movie isn't all that it seems, as it delves into horror. What makes this film so special is that it begins as an action movie with all these recognizable stars like Carl Weathers and Arnold Schwarzenegger, but in reality, it's a slasher movie. This ragtag group of soldiers are picked off one by one as the last remaining survivor, Arnie himself, realizes who the true predator is in this isolated jungle setting. And like any good slasher film, it's mostly the slasher that carries the movie. Not to discredit the charisma of this ensemble cast, but it's the Predator himself that elevates this film from what could have been just a really cheesy 80s sci-fi horror action film. The Predator is not only a character with a really cool design and a varied array of alien technology, but a creature with a code. He plays by his prey's rules and doesn't go after the defenseless. He plays fair. Mostly. He mostly plays fair. He does try to blow himself up at the end to kill everything around him, and he does spend a lot of the time just invisible with laser guns, which isn't exactly fair, but he's still a really cool character, and it's a really charismatic cast that actually makes you care a little bit when they are killed, and that honorable code from the villain that makes this whole hunt feel more methodical, feel more purposeful than just mindless action. I felt like this film was a perfect blend between an 80s action film, which, it's when it came out, and a slasher movie with a likable cast and a great villain. So I'm gonna say that this movie is great. It's a good movie that doesn't overstay its welcome. I'm gonna put it in an S tier as a classic of the 80s, a classic action movie, a classic horror movie. It blends all three of those things really well together. A few years later, we get a new Predator movie, Predator 2. Now, despite the title, this is a standalone movie, as most movies in the Predator series are. We have a new Predator coming to Earth, but this time we take the hunt from a literal jungle to an urban one, a slightly futuristic, slightly dystopian Los Angeles, in which both sides of the deadly gang war, the criminals and the cops, they both become the prey. Now, a lot of my thoughts in this movie are very similar to the first one because the structure of this movie is very much the same. The Predator comes down, starts stalking the humans who are in their own conflict, and starts picking them off one by one until our protagonist, the sole survivor, is able to fight him off. We even get a cool scene at the end where he 1v1s the Predator, and a bunch of other Predators come out and award him with a flintlock pistol, which you see referenced later in a bunch of other movies. But as good as I think this movie is with taking things from the original, I think some things kind of hold it back. I don't think the characters are quite as interesting or charismatic. I do like the main character played by Danny Glover, who's just constantly sweating and losing his mind throughout the movie. I do like the setting. It's very different from the first one, and it's cool that the Predator could be lurking anywhere in this city. But the fact that it's in this massive city, it just kind of means that you're not in an isolated, close quarter situation as this, a very dense jungle. You could just go anywhere in the city. So I feel like the tension isn't really as high. And the movie also spends a lot of time retreading the same ground of the characters learning about the Predators. Most movies do this, but I feel like this one in particular kind of just dragged on at points. So none of these things that I'm saying are to say the movie is bad. In fact, I still enjoyed it overall. I would say it's good. It's just above being okay. I don't think it's as good as the first one, but I don't think it's bad. And I'll put it in B tier. Now, you'd think they'd go into Predator 3 before they do the big crossovers and whatnot, but nope. Nothing for 14 years. The franchise finally makes its comeback with the long-awaited crossover. The Xenomorphs versus the Yautja clash on the big screen for the first time in Alien versus Predator. Or it could be AVP Alien versus Predator. The title of the movie's weird. But sure, there were crossover comics before this, some video games too, but for the first time it would be brought to life in live action. So what is the result of this iconic movie crossover? Well, it's not great. First of all, it takes forever to get going with some really bland, forgettable characters. None of them are really interesting except the main character Lex. She's cool and even teams up with the Predator at the end of the movie. But even when the characters are killed, it's not as gory, as violent as you'd expect from an Alien or a Predator film, because for some reason that I can't understand, this movie is PG-13. Not only is the violence held back, but almost the entire movie takes place in these bland, gray, underground tunnels. The setup for the setting is interesting, like it's an ancient pyramid beneath the ice that a team assembled by Wayland Industries from the Alien movies, they're investigating, only to discover it's actually a training ground for new predators in which they lure humans there to turn them into xenomorphs using alien eggs created by a trapped alien queen who is on Earth for some reason. Yeah, it's a lot, but my point is most of the movie is still toned down action with bland characters in a really dull location. With all that said, what about the actual fighting of the aliens and the predators? It's actually not that bad. The main draw of the movie is decent fun, and the movie isn't very long, but once it finally reaches that point where things can start happening and it's just kind of focusing on the aliens and predators fighting each other, there are some diamonds in the rough, but it certainly could have been better. At least like the practical effects and all the action is pretty good. A lot of people think this movie is really bad, and while there are a lot of things I also believe to not be great about it, it's not the worst thing in the world, and it does deliver some fun action with some good practical effects like the rest of the movies in this series so far, so I'll say it's okay. And I'm gonna put this one in C tier. I guess Alien vs. Predator did well enough because we get a sequel, AVPR, Aliens vs. Predator, Requiem, and this time it's Aliens vs. Predator. Even though the last movie had multiple aliens, I don't know. Immediately after the last crossover, you guessed it, the alien, the predators, and even the xenomorph-infected Pred-Alien makes a return, but this time to small town America, where we follow a group of slasher trope characters of the late 2000s in their gruesome fight to survive these extraterrestrial threats. Except they pretty much all die horrifically in scenes where the lighting is literally too dark to tell what's going on most of the time, which is most of the movie. The two things this movie really has going for it are those typical horror tropes and the way it looks. Now, what do I mean by that? Well, the Alien and Predator movies, they both feature tropes of the slasher horror genre, but they never feature those classic tropes of, like I said, set in small town America with characters like the jocks and the cheerleaders and the nerds and the sheriff, and they're all trying to piece together what's happening. It's interesting to take these iconic film antagonists of the Alien and the Predator and combine them with similar iconic horror elements of different horror movies that have never crossed over before. So we get the Alien crossing over with the Predator, and both crossing over with the kind of basic slasher archetype. The problem with that is that you've seen this classic horror archetype a million times before, so it just ends up being really boring and bland. Like, there's some cool action in here, but you know, what I mentioned earlier is it's too dark to even tell what's going on most of the time. And that's what most people have taken away from this movie, is that it's too dark. You can't really see what's going on. And there's nothing wrong with having a movie set in the dark and it's spooky and scary and it hides a lot of the effects and it makes the practical effects look better. But it's to the extreme in this movie. At least this one's rated R. So if you really like mean-spirited and hard-to-see violence with gore, I guess you get that. So I'll just say this one is meh. It's not the worst movie I've ever seen, but it's not the best Alien vs. Predator film. It's also not the worst Predator movie either. Not long after those crossovers, the Predator franchise decides to go back to basics, sort of, with a film called Predators, plural. A film that flips the script on the traditional concept. Rather than a single Yautja coming to Earth to stalk human prey, this time the Predators, plural, have taken a select group of random dangerous humans to a planet of their own. As I've said, we've gone back to basics here. An all-star cast playing a group of dangerous killers in a jungle stalked by an alien predator. But having them be strangers to each other from all types of backgrounds and places in the world, it adds a lot of complexity to the group dynamic. The fact that they're on an alien planet rather than Earth has us in a familiar jungle kind of location from the first movie, but also with a lot of unfamiliar and extraterrestrial dangers we've never seen before in the environment. It's familiar, but it's creative. Having multiple predators also means a variety in the threats they face and who stalk them throughout the movie. All these clever twists on the original Predator film's formula play to the series' strengths while being just different enough to be entertaining, but I don't know if it's different enough to surpass the original in my opinion. It is still very much like the movie that came out decades earlier, and yeah, the original did it first, and really well too. There's also some things in the movie I don't think work all too well, like the doctor character played by Topher Grace secretly being a serial killer that isn't much of a physical threat for the predators, so I don't even know why he's here, and they reveal it really late in the movie. This major character in the film just felt really odd to me. Overall, I think this was like a really good movie, and so far in the franchise, the second best. So I'm going to say this one is good, and I'm going to put it in A tier. I guess the last movie didn't do very well because instead of following up its cliffhanger ending, we get this unrelated and awful movie 8 years later called The Predator. The Predators, who are barely in it, come to Earth to indiscriminately kill everyone in their path, which goes against their code, in order to augment their DNA to give them the edge, which kind of goes against the whole idea of a fair hunt. To be fair, they don't really play that fair all the time, but it just feels like we're getting a little too far away from what makes the predators appealing. But okay, they're going to augment their DNA. What dangerous beast are they coming to take and improve themselves with that are extremely unlikable and unfunny characters must stop these predators from reaching? An autistic child. I'm not even kidding. The predators want to weaponize autism and become super autistic predators. What a bizarrely tone-deaf, moronic plot. It's so dumb that I can't just help but laugh at just thinking about that idea. And I can't believe this didn't bury the franchise that already, I guess, wasn't doing that well anyway. Predator movies have never been known for complex stories, but simple doesn't mean bad. This not only tries to make things more complex, but takes it in such a weird direction. The predators hunting an autistic child to enhance themselves? Why is this the plot of this movie? Now, a lot of people think this is a movie that's so bad it's good, but I wouldn't go that far. It is aggravatingly unfunny. The Predator movies, they've had a little bit of humor here and there, but every single scene and every single line of dialogue in this movie, they try to be funny and it's just not. There's a ton of bad CGI. There's a scene where the kid encounters this dog that's being hunted by a predator dog or whatever, and then they just forget about him. And it's all over the place with the continuity of the storytelling in the film itself. It is an aggressively bad movie, so I'm saying it's bad. It makes me cringe, it makes me bored, and I'm putting it in F tier. It's lost the plot of what made other Predator movies good. After the really bizarre mess that was The Predator, anything would be an improvement. And that's where we get the film Prey. We've changed the title, it's no longer Predator, it's Prey. This time, we go way back into the past, following a young Native American woman's coming-of-age journey to become a warrior accepted by her people, as she unexpectedly crosses paths with, you guessed it, the Predator. And while this is, another entry in the Predator franchise, this title being Prey feels very appropriate as this is a more personal story than ever told before. We're not following a group of action star military dudes with big guns, and there's nothing wrong with that, but this is the story of a young woman proving herself, which still stays true to the core of what Predator is about. Every Predator movie, at its core, the theme of that story is about somebody proving themselves. And in this case, she just happens to be proving herself against an iconic horror villain. But because she's not so macho tough, this movie feels the most horror-like compared to the others. The Predator is more dangerous than ever before. But there is still plenty of action in the film, and not only is the action great, it's so unique compared to other Predator movies, and most action movies overall by setting it in this time period. All this leaves us with a heartfelt story, more tension than ever before, and really unique action scenes, which is great because Predator, first and foremost, is a series of action movies, and that's why I think this movie is great. I don't really have much to say. It's just really good at what it does, and maybe I'm being generous, but you know what? I'll say it's S tier. It's a very unique action movie. It's a very great entry in the Predator series, and I really liked it. It does all the things that you want from a Predator movie, by being unique in a lot of places as well. Following Prey, we get another direct-to-streaming film called Killer of Killers, which is a really dumb title in my opinion, but this takes the Predator franchise in uncharted territory. Animation. While some scenes feel a bit choppy here and there, the animation overall is really well done and changes up the visual presentation of the Predator films while keeping what people love about the series, and that's the action, and occasionally the horror of the Predator himself. Another key difference is instead of telling one single story, we get 3 smaller vignettes of humans surviving predator encounters throughout history that all tie together in the end. We get one that's Viking themed, one that's samurai themed, and one during World War II. Although I will say I wasn't really a big fan of the last one. It kind of asked me to suspend my disbelief a little bit with a predator pilot and a big fight in the sky, and there's a lot going on, and it was cool. It felt a little too wacky, and I also wasn't a big fan of its main character, Torres. And all this is actually stuff that people have also criticized the film for, that it gets a little too wacky sometimes, and you do lose a little bit of the tension. But besides that, and some strange implications at the end of the movie with at least one predator tribe being responsible for kidnapping the survivors of previous films, which you'd think would go against their code, this movie, again, gives you pretty much everything you'd want from a predator movie. It's got really great action, a really great setting, a cool protagonist that is tied thematically to the idea of proving themselves and overcoming these incredible obstacles. You got a bunch of great predator designs and all sorts of wild alien sci-fi technology. This time you also get it in an animated format, and that's really cool. But I don't think it's the perfect movie in my opinion, so I'll just say it's good, and I'll put it in A tier. But that's still good. It's still a good movie. Let's not get it twisted here. After so many movies, the time has finally come for the Predator himself to be the protagonist. Unlike the previous films, this time in Badlands, we follow the origin of a predator named Dex as he survives a harsh planet of the galaxy's deadliest and very creatively designed creatures, as well as shed the strict rules of what it means to be the ultimate hunter by teaming up with Thea, a very quirky android from the Weyland-Yutani Corporation. That's right, this is very much a crossover with the Alien franchise. And like Prey, from the same director here, we keep the core identity of the Predator series as an action horror hybrid about proving yourself while changing everything else around it. This is actually the least horror of the series. It very much leans into comedy sometimes. But watching the film, I believe Dex proved himself to be a pretty cool Predator. Thea was, like I said, kind of too funny at times, but she really did grow on me. And while their wacky CGI animal sidekick was a little too wacky, I thought it mixed well with the insanity that this planet offers. Predators may be the first time we see an alien planet in the franchise, but this one goes all out with poisonous corn on the cob, razor-sharp blades of grass, sentient tree branches that try to eat you, a whole bunch of robots, and even a deeper look into predator culture on their home planet. I'm not sure if I'd go as far as to say this is great, as I feel like some of the humor held it back, some of the character development near the end happens really fast, but I really had a good time with it, so I'm going to say it's good, and I'm going to put it in A tier. Now look, as I say every time I rank and review these movies, it's all subjective, opinions can change, this is just what I'm feeling right now. Now that I'm finished watching the Predator franchise for the first time, what surprised me the most about these series of films is how good they ended up being. They're not perfect movies, but it is one of the more consistently good movie franchises I've ever seen. And I think the reason why is that it almost always knows exactly what the audience wants. A fairly short, tightly paced action slasher hybrid. It would have been very easy for this franchise to start bringing back the same characters every time to the point that there's no danger or tension with them, to start adding a bunch of complex lore for the Predators that adds nothing for the audience, and ballooning the runtimes to accommodate all of that, which would have made people bored. Fortunately, this franchise has shown healthy restraint and delivered the same formula people love while changing the key ingredients. Every film has a totally different protagonist in a totally different setting with an entirely different predator. It keeps things fresh every time without straying too far away from what people want from these movies. It's a great case study in understanding priorities. But those are my thoughts on the Predator franchise, an iconic movie series that I watched for the very first time. If you've seen any of the Predator movies, let me know in the comments below. I'd love to hear about it, and I will see you all next time. Until then, goodbye.